Good evening, race fans, and welcome to, or I suppose I should say good morning to our American viewers at home, and welcome to round 2 of the HCCL GT4 challenge here. As always, I'm Regan Clark, and you join us for the second time in under 2 weeks here from the Nurburgring Grand Prix circuit. Introduced in 1985 as the Nurburgring's new answer to the German Grand Prix, it consists of 16 turns and just under 3.2 miles of FIA Grade 1. It saw intermittent use as an F1 venue from its inaugural season of 1985 as the German Grand Prix, but also held the European Grand Prix, the Luxembourg Grand Prix, and more recently the Eiffel Grand Prix, which was its final ever encounter in Formula 1 during its bizarre lockdown season. That race was won by Lewis Hamilton. It has become best known as a major part of the Nurburgring 24 layout, where it joined to the Nordschleife in the way we know it since 2002 to form Europe's ultimate endurance racing track. In the modern day, the NLS, the European Truck Racing Championships, DTM and GT World Challenge Europe Series all run at the Nurburgring GP circuit. And don't let its proximity to the Nordschleife fool you. It is a deceptively well-balanced circuit and sadly all too often overshadowed by its bigger counterpart, the Nürburgring Nordschleife. Heading into round 2 of the championship, we're on board at the moment with MCR Guillaume, but recounting last week's results, it's Asahi Ota leading the championship after a resounding victory from 4th on the grid in a rain-soaked Monza last weekend. Getting a look at how the championship standings pan out at the moment, Ota leads ahead of Christian Lebay by 6 points. Manuel Verzi fought with Matthew Copsey, for third place, not Michael Copsey, Matthew Copsey, for third place on the grid, and they are now separated by 3 points in the championship. Flop fought from the back to 5th to make 17 points to his name, puts himself 2 points ahead of Sean Robinson, who himself is only a single point ahead of Tom Wells with Ginetta. Then Tyler Vermack with Mercedes, 8th place with 13 points, a single point ahead of Stephen Sutton in 9th, and MCR Guillaume on our screens at the moment finished 10th last weekend to put himself 10th place in the championship, 11 points to the Frenchman's name in the number 925. As we head into free practice today, let's get a look at the schedule ahead of time now for round 2 of the championship. In terms of those regulations, we're on a 20-minute free practice session, followed by a 20-minute qualifying session and a 60-minute race, just like things were back at the Autodromo Nazionale de Monza last weekend. 1 mandatory pit stop for fuel and tyres. This time around, though, 0% chance of precipitation, where it was 100% last weekend. Ambient temperature at 16 degrees, but we've seen track temperatures drop as low as 12. Random weather is completely disabled, same as last time, variability down to 1%. Cloud cover at 96, so very little respite here from the bitter cold here in Nuremberg, Germany. We have brand new drivers for this round of the championship as well. Alessandro Litti, Timo De Tosto, Fabiano Bartoletti, Kieran McMillan, Justin Benton and Vladislav Mizin all joining the grid for round 2 of the championship. Very close eyes then on Bartoletti and De Tosto as 2 drivers transferring over from the Competizione Performance League's GT4 Pro-Am Cup America series that we covered not too long ago this week. Still on board with Guillaume at the moment. 16 minutes left to go then in free practice. Onto the discussion almost immediately then of balance of performance. Aston Martin, Chevrolet and Mercedes, the 3 heavyweights of GT4, will see primary advantage in today's balance of performance. 13, 5 and 4 kilos respectively shared from those 3 cars. Aston Martin seeing the most advantage of the 3 with that 13 kilo payload removed. So it's going to be quite high expectations for new signing De Tosto. We've seen what he could do with Mercedes. Now he moves over to Warwickshire's finest at Aston Martin. Let's see what he can do with advantage today then. Chevrolet, more prominently headed up by Christian Lebay, who was second last round in a very close battle to the line with Asahi Ota. Loses 5 kilos coming into this round. Mercedes, which we can see right now heralded by MCR Guillaume as he crosses the line there for a 2:06.600 there. On a what is a invalidated flying lap for him in free practice, will lose 4 kilos. BMW only losing a single kilo. Then into the positives, Maserati gaining 2 kilos. McLaren gaining 3. Ginetta, Alpine and Porsche, the featherweights of this championship, all gaining significant amount of weight today. So a horrible time to be driving any of the featherweights in that trifecta. A more than happy time to be driving some of the heavyweight cars in this championship. So BOP working in the rule of extremes as always at Nürburgring as we head into round 2 of the championship. Looking at where we are then, of course, heading into round 2 is the first of our night races, the next of which will be into a more morning time race at Snetterton 2 weeks from now. Round 3 in between that will be at Brands Hatch, and we'll head to Snetterton for that season midway as just mentioned then. then Zolder, Imola, Hungaroring, and the Red Bull Ring to bring us to the end of what has been already a very exciting start to the championship. Too early to call where the championship could go then. Now we'll take a look around the grid to see where some of our new drivers are picking up at the moment. We can quickly catch here Reece Minards. We saw him last round. Finished alongside Jordan Minards as well. The Aston and the Mercedes there getting to the line after a very mixed race at the start of the championship. You can see now making his debut on track despite having signed up a significant time ago with AMG is Dima Nagumonov in the number 44, and he's not alone in that assertion. There are quite a few drivers that signed up for round one, couldn't make it to the season opener, and now make their debut today a round down in the championship standings. But from what we've been able to see in the pre-race practice sessions, Nagumonov is looking rather fast with Mercedes, and I imagine that is also in great thanks not only to his apparent skill as a driver here, but also to the BOP being so heavily in favour of Mercedes, Aston Martin and Chevrolet today. So definitely high expectations on the board for anyone in those three teams. See one of the new drivers today, number 1, Vladislav Mizin. An almost stealth camo there, that very dark gunmetal grey on that Mercedes. Makes his way to Bitten Warsteiner. Ahead of him there is Wayne Grace, not Will Grace, my mistake there. Still struggling for names here in the new championship. Wayne Grace is also a new signing, but that was ultra last second. Sadly, we actually couldn't get that on the new signings of today. It was literally in the last couple of hours before the race start today. Wayne Grace, we've also seen him over on some of the other series we've covered. I believe Competizione Performance League, we've seen Wayne Grace already. So he also makes his debut in this round. Currently the focus there on Vladislav Mizin as he makes his way to Coca-Cola Curve. Looking around, there's Flitzir Flop. Battled from the back of the grid there after an unexpected loss in the qualifying session at Monza. I believe he said that he accidentally left, so it wasn't a disconnect. And ultimately, he fought from the back of the field to a top 5 as one of the strongest performances of round 1. So definitely high expectations for Flop heading into round 2. See Anthony Villorio, brand new livery. And we've seen he's got a record now of new liveries. This one, we saw him run a Sakura Pink or Cherry Blossom Pink livery in Suzuka at the Competizione Performance League's 3rd round of the GT4 Pro-Am Cup America this week. And now we see him what is definitely a very sleek livery. Not sure what the affectations are meant to be at the moment, but it does look very, very sleek indeed. So that's a brand new livery for Villorio, the man of many faces, so it seems. See here, Christian Lebay finished on the podium and started toward the front of that race. Had a very, very strong race, but ultimately the wet proved to be too hard to handle for the Chevrolet. Lebay fought diligently with his machine, but ultimately Asahi Ota got the upper hand. Ended up winning in round 1 of the championship. See here, Lebay making his way around the Mercedes arena section, and even in dry, that Chevrolet really does seem like quite the handful. We'll see what his progress is going to look like today. Fellow Chevrolet John Prime, you can see there making his way out of the Ford curve. And on his way up the Michael Schumacher S's, on his way to Bitten Warsteiner. We'll get a full comprehensive breakdown of the track in a while's time. Another driver who signed up earlier in the season now actually making his debut today, the number 4 of Dion Helgelien with Chevrolet. The American will be competing for the number 4 in this round of the championship. It's always great to see another Chevrolet on the grid as what is growing to be the most popular manufacturer on the HCCL grid right now, with currently, looking at our numbers here, 10 signed vehicles in this championship alone. So it's a very, very popular choice, that Chevrolet. I don't doubt in the near future, whether across some of our other leagues or even here on HCCL, that we end up seeing a single make come out of Chevrolet. And that is definitely going to be an interesting time to explore. We also see a new driver for today, Kieran McMillan. Currently driving the number 37 Chevrolet on his way up the Schumacher S's. I must say, I think we've got a little too accustomed to the more darker colours of the Manoir Racing team, which are the more prominent figures of Chevrolet's paddock at the moment in the HCCL GT4 Challenge. So to see some rather bright and contrasting colours such as this, the bright pink and white here of McMillan's number 37, is definitely a breath of fresh air for Chevrolet. See here, this is Cam Walker. Had a bit of a spotty round in round 1 of the championship, but the American picks up the pieces, is back with BMW. Negligible difference there on balance of performance as discussed before, but he's back in the saddle and ready to roll for round 2 of the championship. Right behind him at the moment is Vladislav Mizin in the number 1 as we make our way down towards the Hatzenbecksborg. Actually, no, not the Hatzenbecksborg, and that's on the opposite end of the track. We're down towards Dunlop here the mistracked there on the track today. A bit of a rough start for us then here on TRTN, and that is rather unbecoming of us here as professionals. We see here Timo de Tosto on his debut to the HCCL GT4 Challenge. And now we're used to seeing the 58 here in the Mercedes offerings here. So now he moves across to Aston Martin on one of their more beneficial balance of performance packages. It is going to leave a lot up to scratch here as to what Timo de Tosto is going to be able to do in his inaugural round of the GT4 Challenge. Makes his way down towards the Castrol S here, turn 1 and 2. Sometimes also called the Yokohama S when used as the Nurburgring 24 layout, which completely skips this section here, heading out through turns 2 into turn 3 and 4 at the Mercedes Arena. Also see one driver also making their debut today as well, mentioned in the new drivers earlier on, Fabiano Bartoletti in the number 26. Now we saw him make his debut in the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Series. Pro-Am Cup America, as a matter of fact, earlier this week at Suzuka. Now that's oh so vividly bright yellow and blue Aston Martin making its debut here in HCCL. Rather fitting then of the aesthetic of HCCL on the contrast of yellows. At 26 making its way out of turn 1 as we speak, having just left the pit lane. And here we can see the man of the championship so far. On an inaugural race win for the championship here, Asahi Ota in the 55 leads the championship by 6 points to Labbé. So a lot riding on the line here for Ota, as he missed out on his opportunity last season to usurp the championship off of Labbé down in the GT4 standings. I mean, getting a look at those race wins from last season as we discussed last weekend, you can see that Asahi Ota wasn't sparse for wins. He did manage to pick up 2 wins over the course of that championship, but ultimately it ended up being a case where he played second fiddle in the championship up against Christian Labbé all the way to the end of the line there. Now he's definitely got the start he's been looking for here, now leading on a high. And Labbé is going to be looking for blood in the water here. He's going to be out for blood against Ota after that crushing defeat in Monza, though it was not one that was pretty clear and defined one there. Ota really did have to scrap with Labbé for that. Labbé was not going to exactly roll over and let Ota take the position off of him. So these two, I do expect them to clash again. The qualifying predictions definitely do look more in favour of Chevrolet today, but we'll see what Asahi Ota can do, as the data is usually often deceiving through the Hatzenbecksburg. And we'll stay on board with Asahi Ota. Hopefully he'll be able to give us one more lap here at the Nurburgring with just under 7 minutes left to go before the end of free practice and before we're on to qualifying today for round 2 of the championship. We're on with Ota as we round the Coca-Cola curve. Turn 16 then gives rise to our opening straight. Begin the run down then the opening straight towards the Castrol S. Hopefully Ota has one more in the tank here for this run. His last lap was nowhere near an improvement on his best, so we will be hopefully seeing another lap out of the Japanese talent. Down to turn 1 we go then at the Castrol S. And this whole section of the track is often quite awkward on the drivers and a little more awkward on the machine, as it's both on and off camber, and it washes the drivers. They're out of turn 2 to the far side of the track where there's that big strip of AstroTurf, can cause the cars to spin out rather violently, as we saw over in the Solo Multi-Class Endurance Championship when we last visited Nurburgring. So out immediately to turns 3, 4 and 5 down the RTL. Down towards turn 6, then turn 7 at the Ford curve. Very hard to get a gauge from our external cameras here to see what the cars are doing through turn 6. Very easy is it to see the cars run off of that section of the track as well. Very heavy braking zone despite the otherwise unassuming shape of those corners. So out through turn 7, down to turn 8 now at the Dunlop curve. An on-camber open hairpin right then to bring us up to the Michael Schumacher S's. Now, in GT3, this has already proven to be quite a challenge with how ferocious the curbs can be. For the GT4s, they've not got the adage of anywhere near as much speed or fragility. So heading up through that section, Ota rather relaxed then in the 55 Aston Martin in towards Bitten Warsteiner, runs it out wide though. So this could definitely be an area of contention over the course of the race. Braking seems to be a bit of an issue today for Aston Martin. Out through Warsteiner, then to Hatzenbecksburg at turn 13. And then into the real save it or send it at the Vidal chicane here. Just clipping there the inside of those curbs. Razor sharp precision there from Ota into the Coca-Cola curve to bring us to the end of our comprehensive tour of the Nurburgring GP circuit. Admittedly, nowhere near as much visibility as we're used to here at Nurburgring, the first of its night races creeping in this season. 2:04.985 was the last lap there by Ota, and he finds himself 9/10 off of a personal best, and moreover off of the session best so far. Looking at those times then towards the end of free practice, you can see just how close it is getting there. And more peculiarly still, looking inside of that top 5 is already 2 of the new signings today. Vladislav Mizin and Timo de Tosto make 2nd and 3rd behind Ota. Then Flitzer Flop in 4th, Stephen Sutton in 5th, Kieran McMillan, also one of the new signings, in 6th and ahead of Christian Lebay. Then rounding out that top 10, Anthony Velorio in the number 41, MCR Guillaume in the number 925, and Dion Helgelian on debut in the number 4 is making for a very exciting session today. And bear in mind, we are not yet into qualifying, so this only stands to ramp up the intensity more and more heading towards the start of today's race. With just a little under 3.5 minutes to go then, we have quite the hotly contested qualifying on our hands coming up, if we are to believe so, looking through free practice today. So to the line went Lebay, and not to an improvement over fellow Chevrolet McMillan. So this is going to make a very, very interesting round of the championship, make no mistake of it. For Asahi Ota, he stands to reason to expand his lead of the championship if he's able to qualify and then finish the race where he is. It's going to be quite the disaster for Lebay. He's going to have to try and find another 7 to 8/10 of a second here on the current fastest lap that he set, if he means to stay anywhere near the Aston Martin. Now, we know, as mentioned in the balance of performance discussion not long ago, that Chevrolet stands to reason to have quite good benefit coming into this round. Maybe not anywhere near as much as Aston Martin, who are nearly triple on that weight loss from 5 to 13 kilos. That still stands to reason that Chevrolet does have at least some benefit coming into this round, whether it be the case that the car just doesn't cope super well with longer sweeping corners. We can see, though, the fastest of the Chevrolets are still picking around at the back of that top 10 in that bottom 5. Right now, it is a field almost exclusively dominated in that top 5, bar the exemption there of Flitzer Flop's 979 McLaren, of Mercedes and Aston Martin. Number 41, as a matter of fact, next to the line. We'll see if Anthony Velorio can break the mold here for the top 5 with McLaren. His fellow McLaren Flitzer Flop in the top 5 already in 4th. So Velorio to the line. Can he go ahead of Lebay and McMillan? Not this time around here at the end of free practice. So this is going to make a very bizarre qualifying session to watch. Not only do we have to deal with the lack of track surface temperature at the moment. I mean, getting a look at the data there, it's 13 degrees on track surface. Not a lot of available grip. Very hard to keep the heat in those low pressure tyres here in GT4. The drivers will have much, much less available grip. Now, this is admittedly still an upside from last round's torrential downpour in Monza. They're not going to have to be dealing with anywhere near as many troubles in the form of standing water, areas of complete net zero grip, but not exactly much of an improvement over. We are back into drier conditions, which is what everyone was hoping for round 2, but it has come at its own cruel cost. Race control then rubbing their hands with glee then at the sight of their misfortune. Right now, though, we can see 8 cars, and as a matter of fact, if we were to play a little bit extra liberties here, perhaps even 9 cars are within a second of the fastest time set currently by Asahi Ota in the 55 Aston Martin. Second fastest time at the moment, just over half a second away. So if you removed Asahi Ota from the equation here, you'd be looking in and around 10 cars inside of that pole position branch there. That would be the new provisional pole set by Vladislav Mizin in the number 1. But he himself is over half a second away. Lebay, now having put himself 3rd fastest, has definitely shook some of the curse here off of the 119. He's now put himself much closer to that front row, but he's off by just over 15 thousandths. It's in fact 18 thousandths of a second there for Lebay to Mizin for 2nd place at the moment. So this is going to make a super narrow qualifying window. 20 minutes ahead of us today then for round 2 of the championship. See next to the line as well, Anthony Velorio still needs to find 9/10 of a second for pole, needs to find at least 4/10 of a second for a front row. And at the end of free practice today, that's his last opportunity to do so, and it was on an invalid lap. So he currently ends of free practice here in 8th position. Very, very bizarre stuff then for the McLaren. We see next to the line the number 411 of Martin Matinee with Alpine. Bear in mind, Alpine, Ginetta, and Porsche are all going to be feeling the worst effects of it today, but Matinee puts it inside the top 10 at the end of free practice, so a great sign there for Alpine. Let's just check in with the 119. So, as mentioned, needs to find 18 thousandths of a second here for second place. Needs to find just about over half a second to pole position in free practice, or the fastest time, but he does find the second fastest of today. So we are looking at potentially another Le Bay front row start. This time alongside Asahi Ota, who started last race at the back of the second row in 4th place. So with 2 more times left to be set on the chart at the moment from the 4:11, Martin Matinee crossed the line actually a moment ago there. So we are just waiting now for the number 1 of Vladislav Mizin, who has had an absolute blinder of a start to his career here in HCCL. As on debut, the Ukrainian talent has put himself not only ahead of seasoned veterans like Anthony Valorio, and moreover looking around that grid as well. So yeah, ahead of Valorio, ahead of Guillaume, ahead of Helge Leon, ahead of Copsey, ahead of Minards. But he's also put himself right up there with the current sort of top dogs of the championship thus far, Le Bay and Ota. So he may be a round down here, but if he keeps on this kind of form, it is not going to be impossible to suggest that Vladislav Mizin, on a string of good results yet to come, could find himself in a very bizarre position to fight for a championship further down the line. Now, bear in mind, we're at round 2 of 8 today. As we kick off qualifying then for round 2, you can see an incredibly lively grid heralded there by Matthew Copsey. He stormed out of the gates there. Admittedly, has not been first out onto the track, but that was some proper enthusiasm from Copsey. Missed out on his opportunity for 3rd last round in that fight against Manuel Verzi, and he is not looking to make the same mistake again. Out on the field is where we can see it's a whole swarm of cars today, but trying to get a look as to who's on that front row. It's Flitziflop and Timo de Tosto to herald that front row of times. Right behind them, they're Cam Walker with BMW. So let's see if we can catch on board with Flop, who looks to be the first driver onto the field. We quickly just see there Asahi Ota now out onto the field. And onto the discussion as we try to go and find the leading car of the field here. The first to set their times today. We're on to the discussion of qualifying predictions. Now, bear in mind, a little bit of liberties are required here. Some of the drivers won't be making it to today's round. I believe among them, Tyler Vermaak and Jorbe van Herle, 3rd and 4th. So that does open up quite a significant window to the drivers behind them. But onto that discussion, it shows Christian Le Bay for pole position by only about, looking at it here, 82 thousandths of a second to Asahi Ota in 2nd place. If they had shown up today, Vermaak and Van Herle would be looking at 3rd and 4th position. That opens the window up then for Anthony Valorio and Stephen Sutton to potentially take those positions off of them. Manuel Verzi would have been in 7th place. And looking at here, Flitzer Flop currently predicted 8th, but like we mentioned there, with that window opened up by Vermaak and Van Herle, that does open up quite a significant gap to put Flop in a potential top 5 start, which, bear in mind, he had to fight tooth and nail for after last round's qualifying debacle. Then further behind him, Elias Svennington 9th and MCR Guillaume in 10th. Now, quite a few of those drivers sadly won't be making it to today's round, as they've already made their reasons and already explained themselves. So as we stay on board with Flitzerflop in through the Vidal chicane, he'll be the first of our drivers to start their flying laps. In hot pursuit of him, though, you can see is Timo de Tosto and Cam Walker. Christian Le Bay also right with them, as well as Stephen Sutton. So we stay on board with Flitzerflop. The 979 starts the flying laps of today for qualifying of round 2 of the championship. Down towards the Castrol S we go. As we stay on board with Flop. In discussion of the news today, not an awful lot in the way of things in terms of discussions so far. We're recording this as the qualifying is going on for the Formula 1 Italian Grand Prix, so nothing to report from there at the moment. We do have some news, though, from Formula 1, and that is Cadillac has signed, I believe it was Colton Herta, to their development team, so that does spur on the theory now that he'll be moving to Formula 2 to obtain significant grounds to join Formula 1 in the near future. Cadillac's lineup, of course, has already been revealed as Bottas and Perez for 2026. That's going to be a very ambitious time for the team. They fought tooth and nail with the FIA, and I think he even went over to Congress at one point to get them into the sport because there was a massive lobbying problem in Formula 1 at the objection to get an 11th team on the grid there. So It's going to be very exciting to see where Cadillac takes things in the next couple of years. Other than that, not really an awful lot of news at the moment. I suppose other than Sebastian Ogier winning in the brand new Ueno Rally del Paraguay in the World Rally Championships, that does put him ever closer to the contention of a record-equaling 9-time world champion fight. And that would put him on par with fellow French talent and world rallying legend Sebastien Loeb. So, down towards the Vidal chicane. We're at the end of the first of our flying laps here for Flitzer-Flop. In front of him, though, you can see is Wayne Grace on debut. The Porsche, he's got to shove out of the way here. He's right in the way of Flop's first flying lap. He's going to be furious on the exit of the Coca-Cola curves, bringing up the telemetry then to see what Flop can do. Bear in mind, next time on the charts coming up is Timo de Tosto at 2:05, immediately usurped for a 2:04.452 on the first of those flying laps. Cam Walker, third fastest. Then Christian Lebay onto pole for the time being. Stephen Sutton in third. And we see Matthew Copsey, third fastest there. Jordan Minard, seventh fastest. Getting a look at that front row, or just outside of it, I should say there. MCR Guillaume, third. Anthony Valorio, fourth, as he crosses the line there. That pushes Copsey, Sutton, and Flop down quite a few positions on the opening flurry of laps. 22 to the line there, just went. That was John Prine. Asahi Ota on his trails there for second fastest. So Lebay holds on after that first ring of flying laps to the current fastest lap of the session. Bear in mind, we're still yet to see times there out of Vladislav Mizin. It was very, very close at the end of free practice. Having got across the line just now, the 4:11 of Martin Matinee, ninth fastest for Alpine. Next to the line, the 44, Dima Nagumanov with Mercedes. Then behind him, the 666 of Reese Minards. So Nagumanov to the line from 15th. Doesn't set a time on the charts. So does Reese Minards do so? That's the real question. From 16th then, he goes 14th fastest. Number 958 on his trails there. Sean Robinson to the line. He himself inside of that top 10 in the championship standings. Doesn't set a time on his first flying lap, though, so a bit of a down and out start there for the 958. Next to the line, Dion Helgelian on his first round here of the HCCL GT4 Challenge after signing up for round one but couldn't make it to Monza. He now sets the 11th fastest time of the session, the 37 next to the line there. That's Kieran McMillan, but doesn't set a time at all, actually. He doesn't set a flying lap after an invalidated opening flyer. Next is the number 979. So we're back on board with the man who started this qualifying session. Now, after that sort of blundered exit of the Coca-Cola curve, it is an improvement for Flitzer-Flop. Up to 6th then after that last lap just gone. Timo de Tosto crosses the line but can't find the improvement necessary to get alongside and ahead of Asahi Ota. Next, we've got a whole swarm of times flocking in here. Vladislav Mizin has already snuck up there to the top 5. MCR Guillaume getting closer and closer with that last lap just gone. Number 41 of Anthony Valorio puts himself side by side at the moment in that qualifying standings to Flitzer-Flop, fellow McLaren on the grid. Number 55 next to the line, so here comes Asahi Ota. Sadly not an improvement then, still finds himself 237 thousandths of a second from Christian Lebay's pole position time at the moment. The number 411 next to the line, it's Martin Matinee, and he's back up to 9th again, so he's been clashing with a few drivers on the grid for control of this position here, and was very, very close to being relegated to the outside of that top 10 as one of the only Alpines left in contention. Next to the line comes the 44. So we'll see here for Dima Nagumanov. Can he set a time on the charts? It's been real struggle here for the Ukrainian in the 44 Mercedes over the course of qualifying so far. We're nearly halfway into the session and not a single time on the chart that's valid for the 44. Saw Reese Minard start another flying lap there in the 666. He's still 16th fastest at the moment. Number 4 next to the line. That was Dion Helgelian on his exit there of Coca-Cola curve. Let's see what Helgelian can do. Currently 12th, needs to find about 0.2 of a second there to Cam Walker. Doesn't find it on that last lap just gone. Checking in with the 37 as the next car to the line. If we can find them just before they hit the checkered line there. It was Kieran McMillan, and we couldn't catch the position jump, but we have seen it now, and he's up to 3rd. A Chevrolet 1 and 3 and Aston Martin 2 and 4. We're seeing already the two more prominent brands. Now, we had the predictions originally that Mercedes could have laid a strike in there. They could have been among the more dominant manufacturers. That's still not to say that they can't be. We can see right now, fastest of the Mercedes cars, Vladislav Mizin, number 1, currently 5th fastest and not too far off, mind you, by about 170,000. It's actually 167 thousandths of a second, if I'm not mistaken there. 168 thousandths of a second there. I just done the maths between himself and Thibaut Tosto's Aston Martin. So that's still incredibly close for that top 4. Bear in mind, that top 4 position is very, very valuable. We already saw already what it can be done in the right hands. Asahi Ota started 4th in Monza, and he took that to a race win. So being inside of that top 5, I'd say even closer, being inside of that top 4 is still a very, very powerful position on the grid. Nothing to scoff at whatsoever. So for Mizin, he's already inside of that prime time territory. If he can find that 168 thousandths of a second, he could find himself even closer to his opportunities here for a potential race win on debut. I mean, it's not impossible to suggest that we have seen incredibly bizarre things go on in our broadcast history here on TRTN. A debut win is not uncommon anymore. Next to the line then, 666. Let's get on board with Reese Menards. On his way to the line then, currently 17th, goes to 15th there, up and ahead of Bartoletti and Prine. Next to the line, the 58. On what appears to be an invalid lap, it's Timo de Tosto to the line. Does the data ring true? Yes, it does, sadly. So halfway through the session at the moment, de Tosto finds himself inside the top 4. A power play position, no doubt, as we saw there. Aston Martin is already a very, very strong manufacturer in this championship so far, proven already by Asahi Ota's talents at the Autodromo Nazionale di Monza. Next to the line, the number 1 comes Vladislav Mizin. Now, can he make his way to the top 4? He makes his way to 2nd and very nearly to pole by 15 thousandths of a second there. So, colour me impressed, and I'm trying to pick my jaw up off the floor after predicting that the Mercedes cars could have maybe scraped to 4th. Vladislav Mizin has made it crystal clear that the ambitions for 4th is a goal too shallow, as he's already gunning for pole position. If that's not already a bit of a spine-chilling message for the current pole sitter, Christian Lebet, I don't know what is. He's on his way out of Coca-Cola Curve. Can the Canadian extend the gap here? On his way to the line, yes, he can. Now, that's over a 1/10 of a second he's got between himself and the Mercedes down in 2nd. Next to the line on what appears to be a valid lap is Martin Matinee. We just saw across the line as well, the 24. And that was Cam Walker on a new flying lap. We'll just quickly catch here with Martin Matinee. He's been pushed out of 9th position again. Now has to try and find 0.3 of a second here to get with Anthony Valorio's time and get back to 9th. Couldn't find it on that last lap. We can see that Kieran McMillan is still on the charge here. Asahi Ota, in the meanwhile, has now made his way up to 2nd and by 0.5 of a second there to pole position. So things really rearing up in the final 10 or so minutes of qualifying today, as we are looking at yet another qualifying shootout, this time between Lebet, Ota and Mizin. McMillan, if he can find about 0.4 of a second, could put himself in that shootout. But it is looking like a story of 3 so far. Chevrolet, Aston Martin and Mercedes all in contention for pole. 58 next to the line, Timo de Tosto. Couldn't find the room for an improvement there over Kieran McMillan's 4th place time. Needed to find about 0.2 of a second there to put himself with. Next to the line as well, number 26, Fabiano Bartoletti, fellow Aston Martin on the grid there on debut to this championship. Now, he already made his debut over in the Competizione Performance League GT4 Pro-Am Cup America Series at Suzuka, round 3 of the championship we covered this week. He's making a 2nd debut, so on a lot of new horizons for the Brazilian talent. Then the 26 still currently, though, in a reluctant 17th position. Looking back up to that top 5, as we see number 97 is making his way to the line. That's Matthew Copsey, fought with Manuel Verzi last weekend for 3rd place. He's in quite a far cry position, as it were. He's at the back of that top 10. It's going to take some serious bedlam up front to put him in the position to fight for another podium again. Bear in mind, with an hour on the charts here, it's not impossible to suggest that it could happen again. The 55 is next to the line here, so with only 0.5 of a second between himself and pole position, can Asahi Ota break the mold here with Aston Martin across the line? Sadly, not this time around, but he still has about 6 minutes here to the line. Just gone across the line there was the 24th Cam Walker, still in 14th with BMW there. A down and out day for the M4 team. Of course, negligible changes there on the balance of performance profile for today. Only about a kilo added to BMW, so really not much gained or lost. 979 crossed the line just now. Flitzy Flop currently 7th with Anthony Valorio for company there in 6th. 44 next to the line as we speak, and that was Dima Nagumanov, goes up and ahead of Reese Minards for 15th place there. The number 44 Mercedes now inside the top 15. 6 minutes to go. Number 20 next to the line as we speak. That's Wayne Grace on debut as well for Porsche on his way to the line. Puts himself 15.5 seconds from pole position, so something clearly awry with the 718 Cayman. So with 5.5 minutes left to go, getting a look back into that top 10, it's Christian Lebay from Asahi Ota, Vladislav Mizin, and Kieran McMillan. So that is the most poignant part of this current qualifying shootout, is the fact that we have 2 of the brand new, actually 3, my mistake there, of the brand new drivers inside of that top 5. Vladislav Mizin, Kieran McMillan, and Timo De Tosto, all inside of that top 5. Right now, it's the leading pair of the championship, Asahi Ota and Christian Lebay, that herald that front row with 5 minutes to spare here. Looking further back behind De Tosto, we've got Anthony Villorio and Flitzer Flop to make a McLaren 6 and 7. MCR Guillaume and Stephen Sutton for a Mercedes 8 and 9. And then rounding out the top 10, one of our podium fighters of last weekend, sadly missed out to Manuel Verzi, is Matthew Copsey. Almost called him Michael Copsey earlier. I have to process so many names here that often we get the wires crossed. Our apologies there to Mr. Copsey. Asahi Ota now pushed out by double the gap as Lebay finds another 0.05 of a second to play with here. Pushes the gap out just north of a 10th. Could that be the nail in the coffin here for Ota's performance in qualifying, as Lebay seems to all but have secured his position atop the timing charts with just under 4.5 minutes to spare here at the Nurburgring. Still a lot to fight for here, and I don't think we've done enough to consider the other 2 factors in that top 4, Vladislav Mizin and Kieran McMillan. And I think going even further out than that, if we can see a real blindside of time from Timo De Tosto, I don't doubt we could see 5 drivers contend for pole. It is a bit wishful, though, after 16 minutes into qualifying today, just under 4 minutes left to go today, to suggest that is possible. But never say never on that front, in my opinion. Next to the line went the number 20. That was Wayne Grace. Puts himself now within 6 seconds of pole position. Needs to find about 3 seconds to the next position up, that being John Prine in 18th position. We just see here Kieran McMillan on his way out of the paddock. Number 58, Timo De Tosto, just crossed the line there, but sadly not to an improvement on that last lap just gone. So he remains in a very reluctant top 5. I mean, of course, you know, oh, my steak is too juicy, my lobster is too buttery. Oh, I've only got a top 5 on one of the most competitive GT4 grids. But still, all of these drivers are clawing, scratching, and feverishly searching for improvement up into that top 4. These are the most coveted positions on that grid, bar none. Right now, after what appeared to be trouble for... Yes, if I'm not mistaken, Kieran McMillan suffered a disconnect there. So if he can reconnect in time, he won't miss out on that top 4 start. But Timo De Tosto has just been granted a 4th place. Bear in mind, 2.5 minutes left to go. And that is more likely than not going to be a case where McMillan can rejoin the field. Right now, that has opened up a gap. It pushes Villorio to a top 5 with McLaren. Flop up to 6th. There's a whole ripple effect there felt throughout the field. The only 2 drivers yet to have set times today, Sean Robinson and Carlos Diaz. We can see Diaz down to the line at the moment. We'll see what the 32 is capable of on the timing charts. He crosses the line, but not to a valid lap. So real struggle for Carlos Diaz and Sean Robinson. Both of them have been failing to set valid times today. We see that, oh my word, Matthew Copsey up and ahead of Timo De Tosto. So that will be, I believe, to inherit 5th if McMillan can rejoin in time. Otherwise, that's 4th for Copsey. So we really did think quite lowly of what Porsche would be capable of, especially looking back into balance performance again today. that Porsche were really on the backside of it. They were on the short end of the stick, 20 kilos. Not that that's phased Matthew Copsey in the slightest here. With just under 2 minutes left to go, if Kieran McMillan can rejoin, that'll be 5th for Matthew Copsey. If not that he'll be complaining, it's 4th. Tyler Vermack in chat asking, what time does solo multi-class endurance start tonight? That would be 7 p.m. BST. You can see there, Kieran McMillan has successfully rejoined the session, so the 37 back up to 4th. That gap still resounding at about 0.3 of a second there for both of these drivers to come and have a go at 4th place. Right now, holding that charge was Matthew Copsey. We can see, though, that Timo de Tosto is not too far off at all. That's under 0.5 of a second you're dealing with there from 5th to 6th. So hopefully no further complications for connection for McMillan and yonder the horizon here with under a minute left to go. We have seen before some qualifying mishaps. We saw it from Flitzer Flop, who actually ended up starting from the back of the field. We're just on board at the moment with one of the new drivers of today. A real talk of the paddock here as the fastest of the new drivers for round 2 of the championship. Vladislav Mizin in that gunmetal grey #1 Mercedes AMG has really wowed expectations on debut, putting himself within 0.3 of a second to pole position. I mean, he's not far off being on the front row himself here. He needs to find about a 10th and 33 hundredths of a second. 33 thousandths, my mistake there. 10th and 33 thousandths of a second to second place. That goes really quite a long way to describe just how narrow the margins have been over qualifying today. Now, we may not have seen 8 drivers inside of that second mark. We've still seen 7, which is remarkable in and of itself. Right at the very end here of round 2 qualifying. Right now, it does appear to still be LeVay for pole position. He does improve ever so slightly to a 10th and a 10th and a 100th there over Asahi Ota, but bear in mind the 55 is still out on track. He has still got one more card left to play here at the end of qualifying. We'll just check in here with Vladislav Mizin on his way to the line. Now he's gunning for pole himself, and he's had a remarkable start to the season already. Let's see how that elevates into his racing performance today, but what a qualifying to remember then for the #1 on his way to the line. Very nearly up to second there, only 0.03 of a second off of Asahi Ota, but now the topic pivots back to the Japanese talent in the 55. Round 1's race winner. Could he be looking for pole position here? The margin is so unimaginably thin here for the 55. 1/10 and 100th to clear the 119. Will it be pole for Ota or will it be pole for LeBay? Only time will tell us different. In through the Vidal chicane we go for the 55. So on his way to the line, can Asahi Ota clear the gap? So fine then. The margins on his way out of Coca-Cola curve. On his way to the line, and it's pole position for Asahi Ota. Better late than never there. We thought he maybe crossed the line already, but no. There, finally, the time reeling in, and by 0.06 of a second, it's Asahi Ota for pole position. What an end to qualifying then in round 2. We do see, though, that if my memory does not deceive me, yes, Christian LeBay is out on track at the moment. So there could yet still be a fight back here by the 119. I am left with my jaw agog here at the spectacle at the end of qualifying today. It may not yet be over. Asahi Ota may have taken pole position. Can it be reclaimed by Christian LeBay? This is brilliant stuff, and we've not even got on to the topic of round 2's race today. Contact between himself and Carlos Diaz. That's the end of the line, so Asahi Ota onto pole. Unbelievable end there. Absolutely cinematic stuff there. Asahi Ota onto pole. LeBay was not far off a fight back there for pole position himself, but he was denied by the then slower car on track of Carlos Diaz. That's the second time this season Diaz has gotten in the way of a faster car and got into some form of trouble there in the form of contact. Fortunately, though, not in the race this time. LeBay will start on that front row, but by such a thin margin there. Blink and you'll miss it. And that's not to detract from the successes here of the new drivers on the grid as well. Vladislav Mizin and Kieran McMillan, 3rd and 4th on debut. Timo de Tosto, 6th on debut as well. So really, quite a lot to write home about there for those drivers. We'll get on to the topic of the full grid in a moment's time, but what an end to qualifying. That was really quite hair-raising stuff, and we've not even got into the race yet today. Looking back at that schedule very quickly, let's get a look here for the regulations of round 2. Of course, we've just had our 20-minute qualifying session. We're now on to 60 minutes of racing here in round 2. 1 mandatory pit stop for fuel and tyres, and with very little variability in the dynamic weather. No rain anticipated. Ambient temperatures in and around 16 degrees, though we've seen it drop to 13, is going to make a rather cold and dreary night race here at the Nurburgring, but it is made for an incredible qualifying performance by Ota and Lebay there for that oh-so-thin front row. Very, very close stuff there. I imagine Lebay will be beside himself there if he had literally one more lap there in the tank, or if that Aston Martin could have peeled out of the way in time. I think, looking on the form that Chevrolet was on, it was very, very close to being decided back into the courts of the Canadian in the 119. That was oh so close there. Well, let's see how that elevates into a race. We've seen these two clash on track before in wet weather conditions in this series. We have yet to see them start on dry conditions. So, on to the discussion of the grid for round 2 of the championship. It's Asahi Ota on pole position by an incredibly close margin to Christian Lebay, who rounds out that front row. On debut to this championship, Vladislav Mizin and Kieran McMillan, 3rd and 4th. Matthew Copsey makes a top 5 start ahead of the first drive of today for Timo de Tosto in this championship. Anthony Valorio and Flitzir Flop, 7th and 8th, makes an all McLaren 4th row. MCR Guillaume and Stephen Sutton make an all Mercedes 5th row for 9th and 10th position. Sean Robinson recovers what was an otherwise not so ideal start to qualifying by putting himself just outside of the top 10 from the back of the field. Dion Helger-Leon on his first drive of the season, though, despite having signed up previously, starts from 12th. Martin Matinee in 13th and Jordan Minards in 14th. Manuel Verzi on a bit of a down and out performance compared to last weekend, starts from 15th. Dima Nagumanov in 16th, Cam Walker 17th, Reese Minards in 18th, Fabiano Bartoletti in 19th, and John Prine rounds out the top 20. Wayne Grace and Carlos Diaz 21st and 22nd for one of the most... Oh, my mistake there. For one of the most popular, more populated grids we have seen here. 22 drivers in all. It is going to be nothing short of madness before this race. So we're very close to that 30-second warning. We'll be getting on board with Asahi Ota, our pole sitter for round 2 of the championship. We now take a look there, that long panning shot of the grid. You can see towards the back of that field there, Nagumanov and Verzi. Also see behind them, that being, I believe that's Jordan Minards. No, Reese Minards, my mistake there. Getting a look then with the pole sitter. We're on board with Asahi Ota, and he'll head up the charge then as we head into the formation lap here for round 2 of the championship. You can see, well, when the external cameras stop giving us this long panning shot here, pulling away then for the start of the formation lap. Asahi Ota from Christian Lebay, Vladislav Mizin and Kieran McMillan for that first 2 rows. It's going to make a very hectic state of affairs down into turn 1. Now, this, just like Monza, has quite the hair raiser for a first corner. That Castrol S has seen many a multi-car incident before and probably will till the very end of time. It is one of the more unilaterally feared corners in the world of motorsport, just like the Variante Rettifilo, which we saw last weekend at Monza. Out through turn 2 then into turn 3. Giving us another slow tour of the Nurburgring GP circuit now. In through the Mercedes Arena section out to turn 4. Now, we've seen drivers go side by side here, and differing lines can create quite a bit of friction, to put it nicely, between drivers. We've seen drivers get spun out of this section of the track on differing lines before. In towards turn 6, then out through the very slight kink of turn 5. And now not too hard for drivers to run over the brakes in this section. So that is definitely one of the primary fears today for Asahi Ota. We already saw troubles earlier on for Aston Martin in regards to braking. And that was moreover down at Warsteiner and Bit corners. So out through the forward curve at turn 7. You can see that dancing back and forth, swerving, trying to generate some heat in those tyres. Dion Helger-Leon will start from the pit lane, as we've just found out there. The number 4 starting from the pit lane. Failure to prepare in time, I believe, was the call out there. the number 4. So he'll start from the pit lane for round 2 of the championship. We're still on board with the front row here on the formation lap. Out through the Dunlop curve, up through the Michael Schumacher S's. Now getting a look over that rear view. And see, it narrows up quite nastily here at the Schumacher S's. Going side by side, though not impossible, is definitely going to create some upset amongst drivers. Do not expect it to go very nicely for anyone if they try and get side by side in through that section. They'll be buying their time for this section here at Bit and Warsteiner. Sometimes also called Kumo and Bit. Warsteiner, of course, the popular German beer. Actually had a bottle of Warsteiner not long ago. Very, very tasty stuff. Can't go wrong with a good German beer. Out through Bit Curve or Warsteiner, depending on who you ask, at turn 12, in towards Hatzenbergsbogen at turn 13. Sometimes also just called Hatzenbergs. This very fast right-hander is going to bring us into one of the more tumultuous sections of the track, and it's going to be even more so with the introduction of lapped traffic, which we'll no doubt see over the course of the hour-long race ahead of us today, down at the Vidal chicane. Now, there's one of 2 available chicanes here. The Eiffel Grand Prix in 2020 used a much sharper version, the NGK chicane, which you can perhaps see just there, covered off by the cones, is actually the start of the NGK chicane, but we're using the faster Vidal chicane here at turns 14 and 15. So we start the lineup process here, 2 either side of it, for what is going to be 21 cars on the field, 1 from the pit lane, here for round 2 of the HCCL GT4 Challenge. We've already had a fantastic qualifying session, so if that has been the prelude for one of the greatest chapters of racing in this championship, then so be it. Side by side then on our crawl to the start-finish line here at the Nurburgring GP circuit for the second time in under a week. Here for round 2 of the championship. Without further ado, as we roll 2 abreast down towards the line, we are green and racing here in round 2 of the championship for an hour ahead of us here at the Nurburgring. It's already a drag race between Christian Lepay and Asahi Ota, and winning the charge right now is the Chevrolet down towards turn 1, but to the inside will be Asahi Ota, with the Aston Martin tries to get later on the brakes. You see in the background, oh, it's contact! It's monstrous contact there from the court of Matthew Copsey. That is a pure dive bomb down towards turn 1. I've never seen an incident such as this. Oh my word, what a horrific start. That's the front row annihilated on the race start. That is the greatest disaster I have ever seen on race start. Total brake failure there for Copsey. We can see further complications for Ota as he comes into contact with Reese Minards. Oh my word, that is unbelievable. But leading the charge now, Vladislav Mizin and Flitzer flop to the front row. Martin Matinee in 3rd, Kieran McMillan in 4th. Do not scratch your eyes. We are seeing absolute bedlam here in the Nurburgring. Down towards the Dunlop curve here, we've seen side-by-side action between Robinson and Vertzi. Up to the Schumacher S's. I have no words for that start. Oh my God. That was slaughter. Nothing short of slaughter we just saw there down at turn 1. I'll get a look at that on the replay later on. We can see even more issues though. And it's hit the 119 again as it seems to be trouble between himself and the 26 of Fabiano Bartoletti. It has been a disaster here at the Nürburgring. We also see caught up in the trouble as well appears to be Bartoletti and also Dion Helgelian in the number 4. Oh my goodness. You can see here Cam Walker caught in the fight for a top 10 between Robinson and Minards. That's Jordan Minards there and the white Aston Martin to the left. It's contact up the Vidal chicane. Both of them running into arms with one another. Cam Walker looking for the insides down at the Coca-Cola curves. He's got the inside there on Jordan Minards. Right behind him is Dima Nagumanov in the number 44. So Walker up a position, then into the top 10. Sean Robinson ahead of him in 9th. Any which way you look here, it is absolute bloodbath mayhem here at the Nürburgring. We'll get a look at what happened down at turn 1. We watch here as all manner of chaos kicks off at turn 1 for Minards as well as for Robinson, who went super wide at turn 1. We're watching from Timo de Tosto's point of view as he's also knocked down a peg here to 12th position after that start. Cam Walker up on the inside of Jordan Minards. You can see Timo de Tosto trying to follow him on through here to Aston Martin's side by side for turn 4. Minards has got the advantage though on the exit. And we see into the pits comes Fabiano Bartoletti. serious damage. Now, we caught that first incident, but Lord only knows what happened up the Schumacher S's. We can see Diaz and LeBay getting into arms here on their way down towards turn 6. LeBay is furious. Down towards turn 7. At the Ford curve, he's right behind Diaz there, currently fighting for 19th on track, giving him the lights. He is not happy. We can see Steven Sutton is caught in a wily train here for position. This is all for 5th, mind you, as I believe, actually no, 4th, as heading up the charges MCR Guillaume. In tow is Martin Matinee, Manuel Verzi, and Anthony Villorio. We're watching here from Steven Sutton's point of view, as this is a fantastic fight for 4th on the grid. I want to try and get a look at what is going on up on that front, where we can see there is a fight going on at the moment on what appears to be for 2nd on the grid. After just under 5 minutes there, a total shake-up of the starting order. We'll get a look at that incident in a moment's time. Oh, pardon me. Leading that charge then, Vladislav Mizin from Flitzerflop, Kieran McMillan in 3rd, Martin Matinee, I believe yes, it was briefly 4th, now down to 5th. MCR Guillaume up to 4th, Matinee to 5th, Verzi right on his tail here in 6th position, Villorio 7th, Sutton 8th, Robinson 9th, and Walker in 10th. Minard's in 11th, Detosto 12th, Nugumanov in 13th, Prine in 14th, but runs it out wide up the inside, goes Matthew Copsey. On his trails as well, we can see now having lost out 16th there to Asahi Ota is Reese Minard. Ota up to 16th, Copsey up to 14th, Wayne Grace on debut in 18th, LeBay 19th, Diaz 20th, Helgeli in 21st, Bartoletti in the pit lane. Unbelievable scenes here at the Nurburgring. Leading that charge then, Mizin from Flop and Macmillan. That gap now out of 1.1 seconds. We want to get a look back here towards the top 4. We've got the man in the middle here, Manuel Verzi, who fought for a podium last weekend. Now he's inside of that top 5. Started 15th in today's race and is now in the top 5. That goes quite a long way to describe what on earth went on. And speaking of, let's get a look at what happened here at turn 1. It was total diabolical brake failure there for Matthew Copsey. Was there even the consideration of brakes? I am not 100% sure. You can see his back end stepped away and clatters there the 55, which in turn clatters the 119, which in turn clatters the 37, and the list goes on. Right now, watching with Manuel Verzi, there could be that fight for 5th, and must I say, a real underdog performance from the driver in 6th place. We quickly just catch here Asahi Ota up against John Prine on the exit of turn 8. Up the Schumacher S's, and Ota leads. So, trying to get on board here with the driver currently clashing with Manuel Verzi for a top 5 is Martin Matinee with Alpine. Bear in mind, Alpine, like Porsche, were thought down and out here in this race, but now we see Matinee could be looking at a top 5 here in the 411. See in the background as well, it's yellow flags out at the moment. Up the Schumacher S's for the 41. So, serious trouble here for Anthony Villorio with McLaren. Now falls out behind Grace and Diaz and Helgeli in there. So now to the back of the field for Bartoletti. Back in the green flag conditions. Any which way you look here, someone is dying. It is a war zone here at the Nurburgring. See here the driver now up to 3rd. On debut, by the way, is Kieran McMillan. I think more poignantly is that discussion of the driver now leading this race from debut. And we did say it wasn't impossible. It was, oh, bit of a side-by-side touch there between Diaz and Grace. That got a little bit messy there. 0.5 of a second currently divides Verzi from Matinee. That Alpine, I must say, has really took the baton and ran with it. Out through turn 4 we go. I do fear for the integrity of my microphone after that first lap. I don't think I've ever yelled that loud in a broadcast, but really, how does one react to that there? That was a disaster. A total cascade of cars in through turn 1. Absolutely brutal. That may very well be one of the largest incidents we've ever seen here on TRT, and that's up there with the likes of Season 1, Round 5 of the NLRL Sunday League, a disastrous start at Indianapolis. You could also say the same for the start of the 6 hours of Spa, back all the way in the GHR XEC. That was a disastrous start. I even saw one of the Orion cars on its roof, but that was absolute calamity. Easily the biggest incident we've ever seen in our time covering GT4, and arguably one of the biggest incidents we've ever seen, period. So looking around the field then as the current contention for fifth starts to die down a bit. We're seeing here that fight for 12th start to kick off. We're watching with Copsey here. And that is quite a worrying sight in his rearview mirror, I must say, for Copsey. Looking behind him, he's an infuriated Asahi Ota. Bear in mind, it was Copsey's brake failure that took Ota out of that charge into turn 1. He had it to the inside on LeBay, who, I mean, he lost the drag race to him. LeBay would have had to go the long way around at turn 1. There was very much so the chance for the 55 to fight that back. Oh, my word. Big oversteer from Asahi Ota. He runs even further off from track. We see over the rear view here of Matthew Copsey's Porsche. Asahi Ota is losing steam there. That could be an indicator of some potential underlying damage for the 55 after that incident. I'm surprised as well with Copsey sort of spearheading quite literally that incident that there is not more damage on the 97. Looking around the field, Timo de Tosto's into the top 10. So he's fought back there. Back into the top 10. Next in his iron sights is Cam Walker. Let's stay on board here with de Tosto. Currently fighting for 9th. The BMW doing a good job here, just his area denial. He's making it a very hard back end to follow in through turn 4. He's just denying him any kind of better line, sticking religiously to the racing line right now. Not even thinking of playing defensively. Down into turn 6, just holds centre mass of the road. Very clever stuff here by Walker. He knows the opportunity he's been given there, courtesy of that first lap incident, which we'll take a look at again. Honestly, I don't think we're going to get tired of looking at that, as that was total disaster. I'm going to take a big swig of my drink there. Oh my word. 10 minutes into today's session, and that has been one of the greatest grid mix-ups I think I have ever seen in my time as a commentator. Right now, Vladislav Mizin leads the charge from Flitzer Flop. Kieran McMillan in 3rd, MCR Guillaume in 4th, Manuel Vertzi in 5th, Martin Matinee in 6th, Stephen Sutton in 7th, Sean Robinson 8th, Cam Walker 9th, but very close behind him right now is Timo de Tosto in 10th place. Jordan Minards in 11th, Matthew Copsey in 12th, Asahi Ota right with him as well, and Copsey right with Minards could make a 3-man fight for 11th position very, very soon. That could even elevate up to the top 10 if Minards and Copsey are able to get a wriggle on here as we head to the Vidal chicane. Running a little bit wide into the entry, at least, was Timo de Tosto, but he's tucked it in quite nicely. They're still to the back end of Walker as we speak. So Copsey in 12th for the moment. Ota 13th. LeBay is back up with inside that top 15, then up and ahead of John Prine, 14th and 15th. Nagumanov in 16th, Reese Minard 17th, Dion Helgalian in 18th, Carlos Diaz 19th, Anthony Valorio 20th, Wayne Grace in 21st, Fabiano Bartoletti in 22nd. We're still watching that fight for 9th, and so we see another dive bomb on the inside by Copsey. So this time he was able to make that stick, but he's really going quite gung-ho down into turn 1. Now you could make the argument that there was very little intention that he was going to brake early, and perhaps the back-end swing of the car, he was trying to move under brakes, and the Porsche just pendulumed all of that weight over the rear end. That caused a bit of a half-blind spin. Down into turn 6 we go. We're right on board with Timo de Tosto and Cam Walker, practically pushing each other down towards turn 7 here at the Ford curve. Right on his backside there. The BMW, you know, despite not having anywhere near as much beneficial balance of performance tweaks, only a single kilo to Aston Martin's -13, it has got a proper thumper of an engine for GT4, and you can see that being channeled out of every corner here. It's an inline 6 versus a V8. And right now, Cam Walker has got that Aston Martin pitched. So down through the Schumacher S's, or I suppose up through the Schumacher S's more relevantly we go. It's Walker from de Tosto. Now Copsey joins the fray here for a 3-man fight of 9th position. So who comes out on top here of BMW, Aston Martin and Porsche? Down into Bit and then Warsteiner right behind them there. You can see 2 more Aston Martins. That's Jordan Minards and Asahi Ota. Bear in mind, we're under a quarter of an hour into this race. I would not see it impossible for LeBay and Ota to find their way back up, not only to the top 10, perhaps even to a top 5, but never say never on that front. We're still on board with a fight here for 9th between de Tosto and Walker on our way towards Vidal. Backs off earlier on the braking there. He's allowing Walker to run himself out of road, but all of this is backing him up into Matthew Copsey, which we know, when he can get the brakes to work on that car, is one of the best cars on a braking zone. So he's incredibly vulnerable on the exit of Coca-Cola curve on his way down towards turn 1. Now this is the strike zone here for the 718 Cayman of Matthew Copsey. What is Copsey thinking this time around? We're watching with Detosto. He may have to start considering a defensive fight for 10th position. He's still on the charge for 9th. Oh, you can see super late on the brakes to bring it to around the outside is Matthew Copsey. He'll have his way to the inside, as a matter of fact. So are we about to see an absolute worldy move here in towards turn 2? Yes, we are, because up on the inside goes Matthew Copsey on Timo Detosto. Was that the strategy the whole time? You could bet your bottom dollar it was, because that was fantastically well held by Copsey. Risky as all hell, but old-fashioned grit there on the 97. Brilliant, brilliant move there. Detosto now down to 11th. Copsey to 10th. Next in line for that fight against Cam Walker. Right behind him, you can see the battle for 12th going on at the moment. Jordan Minards versus Asahi Ota right on his trail as well. It's a very scary sight, because here comes Christian LeBay. There's our front runners in 13th and 14th here. Currently holding on for dear life to 12th is Jordan Minards. This is going to get quite hair-raising. Here on the inside goes Ota on Minards in towards the Dunlop curve, but Ota runs wide. Through goes LeBay up towards 13th. Now still in that fight for 12th. Minards is really biting his tongue here in the 23, as right on him is that Chevrolet, the 119, still in hot pursuit. We're on board with Jordan Minards. This has got to be a real heart in the throat moment. It's up towards the inside at bit curve. Will be to the outside of Warsteiner. Comes Christian LeBay for the fight of 12th. Can he get over ahead of the 23? Yes, he can. Better on the exit there of Warsteiner. Then to Hudson-Becks. It's all over for the fight of 12th for Jordan Minards. But he's now caught firmly in the middle of absolute warfare from our previous front runners there. There's LeBay up ahead of him. Right behind him is Asahi Ota. Both of them on a furious drive back to the top 10. So looking around the field here, we can see Valorio against Diaz. The 19th on the grid at the moment. The Aston Martin up and ahead by half a second there. Valorio taking a bit of gravel with him on the exit of Warsteiner. Down towards the Vidal chicane we go then. Much later on the brakes then goes Valorio. You can see what this problem was back in qualifying for LeBay in his incident with Diaz, because Diaz just takes Vidal so much slower than the rest of the field. He's a lot more cautious through there. Ultimately, that's cost him, because up on the inside out of Coca-Cola curves goes Anthony Valorio to 19th on the grid. Looking back up to the top 5, we can see things are still close. There is this sort of cold war going on inside of that top 5 between Vertzi and Guillaume. The two Mercedes cars now 4th and 5th. Martin Matinet's now dropped behind quite a way there. He's now having to deal with the approach of Steven Sutton. You can see right now on the back end. We'll actually stay on board here with the AMG. That could kick off at a moment's notice here. So we're on board with Steven Sutton in that fight for 6th place. Catch up with these two in a moment's time. We'll take a look around the field. See as well, two drivers that are very close to one another right now. Manuel Vertzi and MCR Guillaume. If you excuse my dog there. It's the fight for 4th place between MCR Guillaume and Manuel Vertzi, between the two Mercedes cars. Stay on board with these two. We'll be back in just a moment's time. We're still on board here with Vertzi. Tries for the long way around at turn 1. It's very ambitious there by the number 6. Can he make that one stick down into turn 2? Much like we saw from Matthew Copsey's point of view not long ago. Out through turn 2. Not this time around for the two Mercedes cars. They got each other absolutely dead set down through turn 2 and 3. 0.2 of a second. You can see Vertzi now flailing around behind Guillaume, looking for even a smidgen of room there to the inside at every single corner. We're just over a quarter of an hour into today's race. We're approaching the 20-minute mark at a rate of knots here as the grid reforms. Down towards turn 8 we go then. See Vertzi losing a little bit more steam there. That gap now out to 0.6 of a second from where it was. It's actually double where it was at the start of last lap. It seems to be in and around sector 3 to 1 is where Vertzi's making the bulk of his time here. Sector 2 almost primarily belongs to Guillaume in this fight. So up through to Hatzenbeck's turn 13. See behind him at the moment, Matinee v Sutton is still in full swing. That's half a second between the pair of them right now. Out through the Vidal. Just checking in around the grid as well. See where the next of our fights could be coming from. Besides the obvious, we can see all-out warfare kicking off now. As up and ahead of Detosto is Christian Lebay, now in pursuit of Cam Walker. Behind Detosto there comes Ota to take position off of him. Those two side by side, as a matter of fact, from the view of Lebay. It's a drag race there. Ota to your left-hand side of the picture. To the right-hand side was Timo Detosto. Detosto leads that charge. Ota looking for a move up to the inside. We're watching over the rear spoiler here of Christian Lebay's 119. A big dive bomb there by Asahi Ota. Can he make that one stick? No. Better on the exit of turn 1. Timo Detosto puts himself to the inside at turn 2. The fight of the Aston Martins back behind Lebay here for 12th position. That is fantastic stuff. A proper solid duel there between the 58 and the 55. But back to the inside at turn 3 after running a little bit wide there. Could put himself in better stead on the exit of turn 4 as Asahi Ota. We're watching from Lebay, and it, frankly, is one of the best camera angles I think we have of this fight right now. Down into turn 6 we go. A bit of dust there kicked up in their face by the 119 Chevrolet. Down into turn 7 at the Ford curve. I mean, we're on board with Christian Lebay. What we're watching behind us at the moment, though, is that fight for Detosto. And that's currently that fight defensively for 12th position. Make no mistake of it, the car you're seeing there is Detosto leading that charge. Now Ota's up on the inside on the exit of the Dunlop curve. We're actually on board with Christian Lebay as our camera car for this fight, as he himself is very, very close right now to a fight for 10th position. Cam Walker only 0.3 of a second in front of him. Asahi Ota is up and ahead. Asahi Ota up and ahead there. I can't get my words together today. I'm falling apart at the seams. Asahi Ota up and ahead into 12th. We're back on board with Lebay. It's like a mixture between his first and last name there. Very weird. So we're watching with Lebay here for the fight of 10th on the field. Right behind him, Asahi Ota and Timo Detosto. Still clashing for position. We see Lebay up on the inside. So that's one position already gained there against Cam Walker. We're still on board with Lebay. As now, bear in mind the BMW is no slouch in a straight line here. So on our way down towards turn 1, there could be the opportunity for a fight back here. But bear in mind, all of them have got slipstream off of Reese Minards. Oh, it's contact between himself and Minards. Down into turn 1. He still holds back on to 10th position. That's a very good recovery there. But that got very sour for Christian Lebay. We only just caught there the trailing end of it, but still. Ooh, that is rough. That is very, very rough there. Still to the back end of Cam Walker's 24 BMW. Christian Lebay is on the charge here. Behind him, Asahi Ota and Timo Detosto clashing for 11th. They're by 1.2 seconds off from Lebay, and they're 0.2 of a second from each other. Just checking in around the field here. Martin Matinee now up to 4th. Stephen Sutton still in pursuit there. 0.2 of a second off from him. And 1.8 seconds up from the pair of them. Manuel Vertzi is back to a podium. And this has come much to the chagrin right now of looking at it on the field. Yes, it has come at the to the chagrin of having a look. Where is he? There it was Macmillan. It was so Macmillan is disconnected again. Oh no. That is horrible, horrible news. But Not if you're Manuel Wurtzy, because that's a free podium. That would be your second podium in a row there, and one that you'll have to do a lot less to fight for, as there's a healthy gap indeed between yourself and the car in fourth right now. Martin Matinee, a man on a mission here against Mercedes. That titular Alpine is the undisputed underdog of this series so far. Diving for the pit lane goes Sutton. Staying out is Guillaume. So Sutton, the first of our pit lane runners, is a curious one indeed. Now, we've already seen emergency pits there for Bartoletti and Minards. Actually reunited there with fellow Mercedes there. That's Dima Nagumanov in the 14th place. So Sutton into the pits. There is that strategic advantage you'll hold now heading towards the halfway mark of this race. There's not been that consideration by the leading Mercedes car there on debut to this series. Vladislav Mizin on an absolute blinder of a drive. Capitalizing on the mistakes of that first lap, he's been able to surf all of the bedlam there to emerge in a very confident lead of today's race by 9 seconds to the nearest car. That's Flitzer Flop in second place, who himself is quite a ways up the road from Manuel Wurtzy. That gap between himself, though, and Martin Matinee, pay close attention to that, because it was pretty confident at one point, but it is bleeding. From 1.8 now to 1.7 seconds. We're on board with Matinee, and it's actually down to 1.2 on the exit of the Ford curve. Is there something awry here at the end of the first stint for Manuel Wurtzy? Because Martin Matinee is closing, and closing fast. He's now put himself even closer here. 1.1, nearly at 1 second there, through the apex of the Dunlop curve. So, to recount where we are at the moment, we're 25 minutes in a round two on what has been one of the most bizarre starts to a race I've ever seen in my time as a commentator. Right now, it's Vladislav Mizin leading the charge. So he's signalling right, the race leader, thinking of a pit lane run perhaps. We're on board here with Mizin. And yes, into the pits then goes the number one. He's into the pits from the race lead. Flitzer Flop in second place. Manuel Wurtzy in third. Martin Matinee in fourth. MCR Guillaume in fifth. Sean Robinson all the way up to sixth. That is an absolute world-class drive he's had today after troubles in quali. Matthew Copsey in 7th, Christian Lebay in 8th, Asahi Ota 9th, Cam Walker in 10th, Timo De Tosto in 11th, Jordan Minards in 12th, Dima Nagumanov in 13th, John Prine in 14th, Dion Helgali in 15th, Anthony Valorio in 16th, Carlos Diaz 17th, Stephen Sutton, after having that pit lane run, is now down to 18th, but he'll be on his way back up. Wayne Grace in 19th, Reese Minards in 20th, Fabiano Bartoletti in 21st. One DNF, which appears right now to be that of Kieran McMillan with Chevrolet after a disconnect. We saw connection troubles at the end of qualifying today. Now Flitzer Flop leads the charge as Vladislav Mizin is in the pit lane. Manuel Wurtzy stays out and will inherit second place, but there's a lot of strategy to be had here in the next 10 minutes of racing. We're in and around that hot spot now for the middle of the race. Pit lane runs, and bear in mind, fuel and tyres are required in this series, so a bit of a longer stay in the pits than most are comfortable with. Ultimately, there's going to be that challenge for Mizin on exit of pit lane of sort of recuperating some of that lost temperature. We see it as a more prominent issue up in GT3. GT4s, they are definitely a lot more lenient, a lot more malleable when it comes to working those tyres in. But one of the primary concerns of Grand Touring racing is from those pit lane stops and from the pit stops in the race is recovering that lost heat. As unlike, you know, for example, another very popular sport in the world of online sim racing, Formula 1, for example, you can regain tyre heat and prime tyre grip within about a lap and a half. That's not the case, really, especially not in a night race and not in the GT4s. You'd be looking at upwards of double, if not triple that length, depending on conditions. We saw it back in round one that it was an absolute nightmare after the pit lane runs in the wet conditions at Monza to recuperate any kind of performance lost on those tyres. So right now, after those pit lane runs, we also saw a run there out of Sean Robinson. He's now down to 15th alongside Mizin. Flitzer Flop leads the charge. Manuel Wurtzy second. Martin Matinee up to a podium. MCR Guillaume in fourth. Matthew Copsey all the way back up to fifth. So I think maybe, despite the incident that the brakes on his car caused, or just driver error, I mean, take one of the two. The stewards will investigate that, not me, which is a fortunate reality of things. Copsey, despite being involved in that incident, is back to the top five. Lebay's right behind him. Ota is not too far away either. And De Tosto's still with Walker now down to 9th. Minards in 10th. That's a great turnaround for Jordan Minards, by the way. I want to point that out. Started outside of the top 10. Now, bear in mind, strategy could still decide this for him. But as he heads into the pit lane, Jordan Minards looking to get the leg up here and following him there. is Matthew Copsey. Both of these two into the pit lane as we speak. So big shake-up coming. Make no mistake of that. This is going to be a strategy race after how things unfolded in that first couple of laps. In the pit lanes as well comes Timo de Tosto and Dima Nagumanov. Also joining him there, Dion Helge Leon. I'll say that is a really snazzy paint job. I don't think I commented on that earlier, but it's like bronze almost there, like a very metallic brown. But really nice paint scheme. I think it is meant to be bronze. I don't think you would go for a metallic brown. I mean, we're not an Aston Martin brochure here. We're not selling you brown. It probably is bronze. So we can see right now, for those who have inherited those podium positions, it is still a razor-thin fight for Vertzi v Matinee. That could be one of the resounding fights here of this race, on top of several others. It has been a real world-class story here to see amongst the chaos emerging here as what was definitely a down-and-out brand for today, Martin Matinee and Renault Alpine. Manuel Vertzi as well. Let's not scoff at the obvious here. He's back onto the chances of another podium here. The number 6 not wasting any time in securing another position atop the podium steps. Leading that charge right now, Flitzerflop. I mean, this can go in any which direction with how much chaos, with how much bedlam has swept over this race today. It is not out of the realm of possibility for things to get even crazier than they are right now. So right now we can see of the charge of drivers that have taken their pit lane runs, you can see this noticeable chunk here at the back of the top 15. Leading that charge, the former race leader there, Vladislav Mizin. In between himself and the car, soon to potentially inherit second place if we were to follow on this trend. Actually, Steven. So all of this is actually updating on the fly here. So not the liveliest of data updates here from ACC. On board with Martin Matinee. That's down to actually a very close gap. After a bit of a blinder through turn 1, Manuel Vertzi is vulnerable to Martin Matinee. So we're on board with the Alpine. And this has suddenly elevated into a very bizarre fight here for second place. Now, bear in mind, they'll end up possibly losing more positions than they gain here under the strategy. But these two taking things all the way to the very end of what the tyres will allow them today. 0.4 of a second for one another, fighting for second on the field. You really got to look at the numbers of it as well. That Alpine, tiny little motor there. 1.8 litre Renault TCE Renault Sport engine up against a 4 litre Mercedes M178 bi-turbo V8. So that is ridiculous numeric standards there being enforced by Mercedes. It is an engine actually double, if not nearly triple the size of the Alpine's engine. And yet here they are, side by side. Sorry, just to clarify what I said earlier there, honestly, no idea. Total word sandwich there. So, bizarre numbers. That's probably what I should have said. I know, you add more syllables to it, people think you're smarter. I think that's the rule of the game here, but bizarre numbers at play, let's put it that way, between Alpine and Mercedes. More than double the size in terms of that engine. 1.8 litres versus 4. It is practically double the engine as well. It's a 1.8 litre inline 4 turbo engine. So really all you'd have to do, in theory, you know, in an ideal world, stick 2 of those engines on the same crank at a 90-degree angle and bam, now you've got the engine that's in the Mercedes car ahead of him. Diving for the pits though, I believe, yes, it was Manuel Vertzi and Flitzerflop. So Martin Matinee, by nature of playing the long game, will lead today's race. As Flitzerflop comes into the pit lane, Martin Matinee takes the lead of round 2 of the championship for the time being. The Alpine leading the charge down to turn 1. That is remarkable stuff for Matinee. We'll see how that folds out over the course of the next 28 minutes. Bear in mind, there's going to be a lot to discuss in the way of strategy right now. After taking their pit stops, we can see MCR Guillaume and Matthew Copsey right alongside one another here, fighting for what is currently 11th on the field. That will soon escalate up quite a few positions before the end of today's race, so we'll see how that stacks out. See behind them as well, Timo de Tosto and Christian Lebay in charge here for 13th. Aston Martin versus Chevrolet. Sahi Ota is back up to second by playing the long game as well. So looking for a serious overcut here. Last round's race winner is not going down without a fight after what has been said and done here at turn 1 of lap 1 of today's race. We're 15 laps in, just over halfway through this race today. Asahi Ota is not backing down. You can see the battle of Guillaume versus Copsey. As now they start soaring up through the positions here, up past Prine and Walker. So now they're inside of the top 10. But we do have a yellow flag there. I've just seen that's down at the forward curve. Let's see if we can catch on board what's going on down there. As we just see you're stranded there. That was Wayne Grace, but he's back going now. So there was an issue for the 20. As we watch from Flitzer Flop's point of view, he's now down to 5th, but only 3.2 seconds from the previous race leader, Vladislav Mizin. So depending on how quickly he can fire up those tyres and get closer to Mizin, there could be an inherited fight for the race lead on our hands here, as these two did previously occupy the front row after the chaos of the opening laps. See, Valorio's playing the long game like Ota, and he himself now onto the podium positions, but you can see Mizin is in pursuit for 4th. We'll have to forgive the jingling and occasional barking. My German Shepherd, fully grown by the way, has decided now is the most convenient of times to get underneath my desk. I'm not sure what it is with big dogs and not realizing that they're massive. We had the same thing with our Great Dane. Now into the pits goes Valorio, as well as Ota. So round the outside, they're running in parallel before the pit lane was Vladislav Mizin. See here from LeBay, he's also taken his pit stop run. He's up and ahead of Tosto. That gap now opening up from 0.3 to 0.7 of a second for the Canadian. So he could be finding his way back to the top 10 today. And bear in mind, he has not had 1 but 2 incidents down at turn 1 already. Martin Matinee still leading with Alpine, but for how much longer? 37, make it nearly 38 seconds between himself and Vladislav Mizin's Mercedes. "25 minutes just under left to go then. Matinee leads, Mizin second. See here, side-by-side action between Diaz and Copsey as they go down into turn 2. Diaz running wide there out through turn 2. Copsey up to 7th. There we go. We finally fixed a problem with one of our graphics, and actually just in time. So it was earlier on in that fight for 6th. We actually couldn't show the graphic saying fight for 6th. For whatever reason, the Stream Deck save just didn't load proper, and we lost one of our source visibilities on OBS. So now I can press this button, and there's the fight for 6th that we've been waiting for. It's actually, that's getting eerily close, as a matter of fact, to happening on track. MCR Guillaume 1.1 seconds from Matthew Copsey. There could be that actual real fight for 6th pretty soon. Can see that a stop-go 30-second penalty has been issued for Anthony Villorio. Right now, we could be seeing here from the perspective of MCR Guillaume. Now, bear in mind, 1.4 seconds in front, but much closer still to him. He'll be looking right now at a defensive fight for 6th place. You can see getting closer and closer and closer here. Now, it's not out of the realm of possibility, depending on how quickly he can reel in the 2 Mercedes cars in front of him, for him to be in the fight with Sutton for 5th. But with that pit lane run now by Martin Matinee in the 411. So Mizin goes back to lead, Flop in second. Where does Matinee emerge then amongst this fight, as we are about to see upgrade to the fight of 5th? Matinee's on his way out. Can we see the Alpine on our exit? There he is, and he does emerge quite a ways behind there, but he'll be towards the back of the top 10. But what a performance Matinee has had in this race today. He emerges actually ahead of Asahi Ota. See here from Guillaume's point of view. Bit of a wide run into turn 1. Fortunately, Copsey also had a bit of a wide run, so no imminent loss of position on the horizon for him there. See here with Sutton now up to 4th. Vertzi 3.5 seconds up the field. Flop 20 seconds up the field. And let's see if we can get a look here. There's our race leader on what is looking to be an ultra rare occasion And we said it was becoming more and more common. Now, the last time we've seen a driver enter a series to an immediate race win, bear in mind this doesn't include, say, for example, the opening round of a championship, because that's a given. You're entering it for the first time, regardless of if you were there last season. You're entering, say, Season 1 to Season 2 for the first time. So on just a random late debut to a win, last time we saw that was the NLRL Solo Multi-Class Endurance Championship, and that was won by Daniel Durga at the last round just gone. You do see the number 41 is into the pits. Anthony Valorio is in. We saw a yellow flag out for the 20 on the exit of turn 8. That was for Grace, so Wayne Grace in more trouble right now with Miz in. Let's see if we can catch on board with the nearest fights going on. It's 0.8 of a second between Diaz and Robinson. Looking further up the field here to see what's going on. We can see DeTosto 1.1 seconds right now from LeBay. Himself 1.3, 1.2 seconds, as a matter of fact, from Matinee. Let's see if we can catch on board here with Martin Matinee as clawing up to the back end of him here as Asahi Ota from the back of the top 10. 21 minutes to spare here at the Nurburgring. We are perhaps about to see that fight for 9th position, and this is going to be a Herculean effort by Martin Matinee to hold on to this position. 0.5 of a second between himself and Asahi Ota's Aston Martin as he makes his way out of turn 16 onto lap 18 of this race with just under 21 minutes to go. And very similar in vein to when he was fighting with the Mercedes of Manuel Wirtz. He's also up against a 4-litre twin-turbo V8 engine, this time the M177, which is an export variant made by Mercedes-AMG for use by Aston Martin in their 2019 V8 Vantage, which you see right there over the rear quarter of Martin Matinee. Number 41 in trouble again, so yellow flags are out for the forward curve at turn 7. That's for Anthony Valorio, so it has gone from bad to worse here. There is a yellow flag out for a car stranded on the far side of the track. We actually might be able to see it here from Matinee's point of view, as they're off on the right-hand side in the wall there. That's the 41, so the end of the line for Anthony Valorio. A race to forget then here at the Nürburgring. Back in the green flag conditions then for the time being. Just under 20 minutes to spare. We're now very firmly into that fight for 9th position here between Ota and Matinee. In front of them there, DeTosto 1.5 seconds up the road, kicking a little bit of dust into their eyes on the exit of turn 8. Up the Schumacher S as we go. Now we know the Alpine's got quite solid manoeuvrability. We got to see some of that on display last round at Monza. What can it do though, toe-to-toe with last round's race winner in the number 55 Aston Martin? So I am told that is not the 41 out of this race. The 41 has managed to make its way back on track. So that is remarkable turnaround for the 41 of Anthony Valorio. Right now we're watching with Matinee over his rear wing, as we can see getting closer and closer and closer and closer. It's not a matter of if, but when that Aston Martin gets side by side with him. On our way to turn 16, Matinee still holding on to knife. He's got him in the manoeuvrability department out through turn 16. The Aston Martin is in hot pursuit on the exit of Coca-Cola Curve. And this is where he reels him in. The Alpine not the greatest in straight line speed. We've got to appreciate the ingenuity of the Renault engineers who dreamt this thing up, because it uses the same underpinnings as a Renault Scenics engine. On the inside goes Ota from a mile away. The 55 dive bombs the 411. Can he make that stick to turn 2? Matinee side by side with Ota. David and Goliath. Look at the size difference between the titular Alpine and the monstrously large Vantage. Running out wide through turn 2, then to turn 3. Asahi Ota loses half a second to Martin Matinee in the 411. He's not happy with that. He is not happy with that at all. Wayne Grace runs into trouble. He's back into the pit lane. Momentary yellow flag. I believe that could be the 20 out of this race with 18 minutes left to go. Getting a quick look as to where everything else stands on the grid right now. There is a very close fight going on up for 5th. MCR Guillaume versus Matthew Copsey down into turn 8. That was so nearly contact between the pair of them. Caught that right in the nick of time. Timo de Tosto, 0.7 of a second from Christian LeBay. We're watching right now Martin Matinee versus Asahi Ota for 9th position. That could go any which way. We're going to have to like teeter between the pair of them here to see how this pans out. Quickly checking in with Matthew Copsey, side by side with MCR Guillaume, but to the outside a bit. Curve swings it the long way around. Can the Mercedes fight that one back into Warsteiner? No, he can't. What a move to the top 5 then by Matthew Copsey. Getting back on board of Ota v Matinee. As now we exit Warsteiner, the same area where Copsey was able to cement that move on Guillaume. We now see Matinee still running for the hills here against the approaching Aston Martin, looking for its way to the inside at Vidal. Surely he doesn't think of a move to the inside there. No, covered off immediately by the Alpine. In towards Coca-Cola curve. Now, we've already seen Asahi Ota is not afraid to get his hands dirty here and go for a proper naughty dive bomb into turn 1. He's done it last lap. Is he going to even think about doing it this lap? Second time's the charm, perhaps, for the 55. It's all or nothing now. 16.5 minutes to go. He's closer than he was the lap before, so the bid is absolutely on the charts here for the 55 to dive for the 411. He's going for it there, up to the inside, very late on the brakes, but backs out. But what he has done, he's trying to get inside of Matinee's head. One of the most textbook examples of, I guess the closest term would be psychological warfare. I'd say it's more mind games, realistically, in racing, is getting your opponent to start defending early. Get your opponent to start looking in their mirrors instead of looking at the road ahead, and it can very easily cause them to run over their line or run off the track entirely. It's a classic brain game. Just quickly checking back in on Guillaume v Copsey. Copsey now 0.6 of a second up the road. Checking in on De Tosto v Lebay. 1 second between the pair of them. And Lebay himself 1 second away from Guillaume. We're back on with Ota and Matinee. You see here from the attacking point of view, the 55 is in pursuit. Down towards turn 8. Can't find the room this time around. Still clawing around the back end. And must I say, it has been one of the greatest defensive position I've seen from the Alpine of Martin Matinee all season. He does not let these positions just slip between his fingers there. That 411 is moving heaven and earth to keep the Aston Martin behind. Down to Bitten Warsteiner. Asahi Ota could be looking for another move up to the inside here as we go in towards Bit Curve. He holds off, trying to get Matinee to defend. But that Alpine is absolutely steadfast to the racing line through Warsteiner. It's brilliant stuff here in the final 15 minutes of racing. What has been no doubt one of the most bizarre rounds of racing I have ever covered here on TRTN, but one that has been an absolute treat because of it. It's delightfully chaotic then here at the Nurburgring. And we're not exactly starved for choice. We're going to be back at the Nurburgring GP circuit tomorrow evening at the NLRL Sunday League. Trying to get on the inside there through Coca-Cola curve. Where's Asahi Ota now even closer to Martin Matinee, and I think Matinee's acutely aware of this because he's holding the right-hand side of the track. He's getting ready here for a little bit of a bump draft, perhaps even from the 55, but no, the Aston Martin is to the inside. It's going to have to be absolute gung-ho send here to keep this around the outside for Martin Matinee, and he absolutely does go for it around the outside at turn 1. He'll be to the inside at turn 2. Can you believe the like? Still holding his way to the inside. Matinee defending for 9th. He's now back behind Ota, but he's to the inside at turn 3. Ota will be to the inside at turn 4. Who comes out on top then through the Mercedes arena? It's Asahi Ota by 0.2 of a second. Matinee, though, is still with to his rear quarter there. Now to the outside at turn 6. He'll be held off there for the racing line. Swings back around it. Ota still in 9th position as we head to the Ford curve. For all intents and purposes, I don't think this is the end of the road just yet. I think Martin Matinee has got one more trick up his sleeve here in this fight. He may have just lost out 9th position, but if he defends as good as he attacks, we're in for a very good fight here. Or I suppose if he attacks better than as good as he defends even. Sounded a lot better in my head. Oh well, up through the Schumacher S as we go. In towards Bitten Warsteiner. And that was cheeky there. That was very cheeky. I think Asahi Ota knows already drivers are willing to try their luck on a dive bomb. Was that the inkling of a potential defense there into Bit Curve? You see the Aston Martin, though, when given the reins and given free open air, it's just gone. It's a bullet by comparison. Looking in here, we just catch the axiom point of the fight between Guillaume and Copsey. Guillaume runs over the Vidal chicane, potentially to lose position out here to the warring duo of Lebay and De Tosto. Watching here from De Tosto's point of view, as we head up the opening straight, you can see that Christian Lebay is in the drag race now between MCR Guillaume. Guillaume covering the inside, Lebay to the outside as we head towards turn 1. Later on the brakes goes MCR Guillaume. Could he run out of road here into turn 1? Yes, he can, because to the inside comes Christian Lebay right on his trails here. We're on board with Timo De Tosto with Aston Martin. All of this in contention, by the way, for 6th. A 3-man fight here. Aston Martin, Mercedes and Chevrolet, what were the 3 dominant manufacturers of this field, now find themselves scratching around for 6th place. Lebay's all over the backside of MCR Guillaume through the Ford curve, but can't find room. The land of the giants here for 6th place. Running super wide there. Another mistake for MCR Guillaume. He loses position out to Lebay. Does he lose position out, though, to Timo De Tosto, who's in pursuit of Lebay right now? He's squeezed all the way to the right-hand side of the Schumacher S's. So De Tosto will not be happy with the antics there of MCR Guillaume. That got very, very dicey very, very quickly, as a matter of fact. Now, more realistically, De Tosto's looking at the fight for 7th, as getting up and ahead now, looking to open the gaps up, is Christian Lebay in 6th place. We'll catch up with these 3 in a moment's time here. We're getting on towards the final 10 minutes of today's race. Looking around the field, Asahi Ota not too far away from the fight we've just seen there. Now more poignantly up and ahead of Martin Matinee by a growing margin there, 0.8 of a second as we hit the Vidal chicane. Just drops down to 0.7. You can see he's slowly pushing more and more away from the Alpine since that move. It was proper white-knuckle, side-by-side action between these two. One of the best battles we've seen today, bar none. See here, down in 16th, the fight between Robinson and Diaz. Through turn 8 we go. MCR Guillaume runs into even more trouble now. Going wide at turn 1. Drops himself into the iron sights of Timo De Tosto. 10 minutes to go then here in the Nurburgring. And having a look at where things stand at the moment. Now, bear in mind, this is very quickly subject to change with how close these drivers are to one another now in the closing 10 minutes. Vladislav Mizin leads the charge by double figures to Flitzer-Flop in 2nd. Manuel Verzi looking at another 3rd here. Steven Sutton up to 4th. Matthew Copsey in 5th. There could be that fight for 4th at a moment's time. These two right with each other on the exit of the Ford curve. We'll be checking in with these two in a moment's time. Christian Lebay in 6th. MCR Guillaume in 7th, but could lose the position out to Timo De Tosto in 8th position. Those two right with one another here as we make our way down towards the Dunlop curve at turn 8. Asahi Ota in 9th and Martin Matinee rounds out the top 10. Cam Walker in 11th. Dimo Nagumanov in 12th position. Jordan Minot in 13th. Dion Helgeli in 14th. John Prine 15th. Carlos Diaz 16th. Sean Robinson 17th. Reese Menard 18th. Fabiano Bartoletti in 19th. And Anthony Valorio in 20th. 2 DNFs today. So let's see if we can catch on board not only with the fight here between Guillaume and De Tosto, but I want to get a look up the road for Sutton v Copsey. That's by 0.3 of a second right now, but so too is the same for this fight right here. Oh, fantastic. We can actually get a look just with one click of the button there. That's great. So watching from the defending point of view for both of those fights then. Right now heading to the Vidal chicane. Guillaume from De Tosto. Then further up the road from them is that fight of Sutton v Copsey. Copsey, ever the last 10 minutes fighter merchant, this one. He fought for a podium there, sadly missed out on the opportunity. He could actually find his way to another 4th place finish today in his fight against Steven Sutton. Down towards turn 1 we go then. We know how long he wants to take this on the brakes in that Porsche. Later on the brakes, but to the outside means he won't find much ground on Steven Sutton's Mercedes out through turn 1. He may have to try and swing it all the way around, which he does there to put himself side by side at turn 2. That's the most bizarre thing about the Mercedes Arena section. There's so many ways to take that section and still be side by side with your opponent, but down into turn 3, all of this is just allowing LeBay closer and closer. He could find his way to a coveted top 5 after all things said and done. That is a real turnaround for the 119. Looking behind them, just quickly to see what's going on here with Guillaume and De Tosto. They're still right with one another here, 0.2 of a second on their way to turn 6. Looking further up the road here for what goes on between Sutton and Copsey. A battle in parallel, seemingly, here for both 4th and 7th. I must say, like the Alpine we spoke on there of Martin Matinee, that Porsche of Matthew Copsey has really been playing against the odds here. The worst kind of balance of performance one could expect coming into today's race was befalling Porsche and Alpine, and both of them have rose to the occasion and then some, well and above the call of duty here for today. Matthew Copsey, he is not out of this fight at all, but I tell you who is into this fight is Christian LeBay. He's now within that second barrier to Stephen Sutton, so bullets being sweated down by the number 7, knowing not only has he had Copsey pestering his backside over the course of the last 10 minutes, now he has the current championship runner-up, soon to potentially lead the championship, of Christian LeBay. Looking behind them, we can see it's closer for Copsey v Sutton. We'll stay on board here for that fight of 4th position. We're on board with Stephen Sutton, and it is a defensive fight for 4th, right on his tail now. It could actually be worlds colliding here in the next 6.5 minutes, because I've noticed as well, getting closer and closer is MCR Guillaume and Timo De Tosto. Could we see, in the last 6 minutes of racing, dare I say it, 5 cars fighting for 4th position? Right now, we're still in that fight, one-on-one here between Copsey and Sutton. Down towards turn 1 we go, trying the same antics as before. Longer of the 2 lines for a more aggressive late apex, and it may have just sold him the dummy here because Sutton has a much worse run of things down into turn 1. Bear in mind, all of this invites Christian LeBay into the charge, and there is the Chevrolet right onto the backside, and it's contact again, this time between Copsey and LeBay. This is the second time this has happened to them. We couldn't see exactly the angle, but we could see LeBay to the inside, runs it out a little bit past turn 3, and they're clattered by the Porsche. When will the madness end here for LeBay? Still fighting for 4th then, Stephen Sutton. We'll cut away from him to check in with the scope of things here, as now invited into the fray comes Asahi Ota on the fight of Guillaume v De Tosto, and there's Christian LeBay right with, so that's terrifying for these two. That's the previous front row in their rear view mirror. Down to turn 8 we go. De Tosto around the outside here on Guillaume. This is all-out warfare we're seeing right now. Watching from Guillaume's point of view, all of this in contention for 6th. Up the Schumacher S's, Ota side by side with De Tosto. Let's get a look over the rear view as Asahi Ota now up to 7th. We see Copsey up and ahead of Sutton in that last lap just gone. There goes Matthew Copsey up and ahead now to 4th. We're watching with MCR Guillaume as war is unfolding behind him here. You can see in trail there, Asahi Ota, Timo De Tosto, Martin Matinee, and Christian LeBay all in charge there. Looking back in on Sutton v Copsey, as we can see MCR Guillaume is closing the gap. Oh, it's a big slide there by Stephen Sutton. How on earth he did not find his way into the inside wall there is a miracle. Fantastic car control from the number 7. 4 minutes to go. And while that podium seems all but decided right now for Mizin, Flop and Vertzi, we are still in discussion of what goes on here at the back of the top 5, as it seems to have evolved from what was the fight for 6th could actually be the fight for the last of those top 5 positions between the rest of the top 10. I don't believe it. Let's see if we can catch on board here. Let's get on board with the man in the middle. Asahi Ota started this from pole position, got clattered in the turn 1 by Matthew Copsey, who now resides in 4th. Ota now up into the top 10 and very close to the chances of a top 5. Has 2 Mercedes cars in front of him there, MCR Guillaume and Stephen Sutton, to clear before that's an option. Down to turn 6 we go then. You can see that fight for 5th starting to unfold in front of him there. So getting back on board with MCR Guillaume and Stephen Sutton. We'll stay with Guillaume here. This is going to be that fight for that fight of 5th. Down into turn 8 we go. Bear in mind, that could flip on its head here to be the fight for 6th in a moment's notice, depending on how he can take the next couple of corners here, because right on him is Asahi Ota. Bear in mind, any kind of trouble up here for the fight of the top 5, it ripples down to the back of that top 10, so that will invite in Matinee, Di Tosto and LeBay, as well as Ota. Into pit, now Warsteiner. So we are approaching the final laps of today's race. Make no mistake of it, ladies and gents. We are in and amongst it here in the Nurburgring. And for a lot of drivers today, it's going to be a race to forget. For a lot of drivers today, however, it's also going to be one of the most exciting races they've had all season long. Right now, we can see that the choices here for a fight of 5th have started to drop away from Guillaume, as now a very present sight in his rear view mirror. Faster by 7/10 on the last lap is Asahi Ota's 55 Aston Martin. Down towards turn 1, you can see much later on the brakes, following on his trails there, Timo Di Tosto very nearly finds his way to the backside of his fellow Aston Martin. In the background as well, you can see Martin Matinee and Christian LeBay look to be getting into a fight in a moment's time here for 9th on track. 1.5 minutes to go. So the race leader, Vladislav Mizin, in the number 1, has just made his way out of turn 8. So he'll be going on to the final lap of the race next coming. It's a drive-through penalty for MCR Guillaume. So it's disaster at the closing chapter of today's race. That could be a very nice and easy top 6 finish there for Asahi Ota. MCR Guillaume will be beside himself here after fighting diligently for where he is on track. It's all come apart at the very, very last minute. That has got to be absolutely gut-wrenching for Guillaume. Make no mistake of that. In the background, you can see that it is a noticeable drop-off of performance. He now knows it's moot to fight for the race. There's no point now. Drive-through penalty is pretty much killed off his chances of a top 10 today. That is... It gets to the point you start to feel a little bit sorry for him there. That is really quite heartbreaking. He drops all the way behind now, out of the Schumacher S's. So taking a look around the field, Vladislav Mizin now leading the charge on the final lap of the race, and he's led by 15 seconds on a remarkable debut from the number 1. We'll catch him towards the end of this lap here as we try and take a look around the field. Manuel Verzi will pick up another podium position. Flitzer Flop on his highest finishing position this season. His previous result was a top 5 finish. Now he makes his way to the podium for the first time here on round 2. So let's get a gander around the field. It's into the pits there from behind. The 119 of Christian LeBay went MCR Guillaume to the pit lane for a very reluctant drive-through penalty. He may still yet have maybe just enough time here to emerge 10th, but really it's a bit of a slim picking there for the 925, and really he's fought very, very hard for today's race, but he's flown a little too close to the sun for track limits, and the stewards were not happy with that one at all. We're watching here with Christian LeBay right on the back end of Timo Di Tosto, who now both of them have lost out position to Martin Matinee. So what a turnaround for the Alpine. He's now up and ahead of both the Aston and the Chevrolet. We won't have much more time to think about it because we're not far off the checkered flag today for round 2, but it is going to be a very close race to the finish line for a lot of the grid today. You can see that, yes, Guillaume emerged behind these two on our screen for the fight of the last of the top 10 positions. Dima Nagumanov versus Cam Walker. BMW versus Mercedes there. We can see Martin Matinee currently fighting amongst the ranks here. 6th and 5th in front of him. The number 23's into the pit lane now. So that's trouble at the end of today's race for the 23 of Jordan Minards. We're going to get on board, though, with Vladislav Mizin. We see side by side here between Sutton and Ota, so that will quickly be decided. But heading to the line then, here on the final lap of today's race. What a debut drive it has been for this driver here. The number 1 of Vladislav Mizin on his first ever race here comes home. Take a bow as the checkered flag arrives for Vladislav Mizin, who wins in Nurburgring. What an opener by the number 1. So let's see how the rest of this unfolds, because it is still very close in the back of that top 10. Much yet to be decided here. Flitzer Flop, though, has had this one wrapped up for him. 2nd place, his best result of the season so far. Another podium then for Manuel Verzi. But let's see, as Matthew Copsey's going to be finishing 4th. Sutton is absolutely swarmed here. The lapped car of, I believe that to be, yes, Reese Minard's down to Vidal. That could be arms there as all very nearly contact between all of them. But here comes Steven Sutton leading the charge for a top 5 finish. Right behind him is Asahi Ota and Martin Matinee around the outside. Right behind him, Timo De Tosto and Christian Lebay all the way to the line. Here comes Sutton. There was trouble there for De Tosto. It's all over for him there at turn 16. I don't believe what I'm seeing. As the race started with Bedlam, it ends with Bedlam for De Tosto. Sutton to the line, 5th. Ota 6th. Matinee 7th. Lebay 8th. Was that contact between himself and De Tosto? Very likely. How does it pan out here for the fight? The last of the top 10 positions. Cam Walker takes home top 10 finishes here in the Nurburgring with BMW. Dima Nagumanov just outside by 0.8 of a second. MCR Guillaume on a reluctant P12 finish. Dion Helgalian 1.6 seconds behind him. John Prine looks to finish 14th. Sean Robinson up and ahead of Diaz there for 15th. The last of the top 15 positions on the grid there. Diaz looking to finish 16th. Bartoletti 17th. Villorio in 18th. Oh my word, what happened there for De Tosto and Lebay? I saw the flash of the white and blue there. That's what made me suddenly snap back to what had happened there. I think he did get turned around. It was either a spin or a turn there. I'm not entirely sure. They were very close to one another for 8th there on track. That has all come apart at the seams for De Tosto. Fortunately, still a top 10 finish, but he will be boiling with rage in the paddock right now. To the line, then comes Sean Robinson. Carlos Diaz not too far away from him there to mark the end of your grid. So what a finish then. Mizin, your winner in Nürburgring round 2 of season 1 of the GT4 Challenge here on HCCL. Then second place to Flitzer Flop. Third place for Manuel Verzi, his second podium this season in a row. Matthew Copsey in 4th, Steven Sutton in the top 5, Asahi Ota 6th, Martin Matinee 7th, Christian Lebay 8th, Timo De Tosto down to 9th, Cam Walker 10th, Dima Nagumanov in 11th, MCR Guillaume 12th, Dion Helgalian 13th, John Prine 14th, Sean Robinson 15th, Carlos Diaz 16th, Jordan Minards in 17th, Reese Minards 18th, Fabiano Bartoletti 19th, and Anthony Villorio 20th. 2 DNFs from Wayne Grace and Kieran McMillan. Oh my word. That is a lot to take in, isn't it? A brand new race winner on debut and absolute mayhem here at the Nürburgring. Well, for us here at TRTM, we do hold a bit of a lump in the throat right now because we are not done yet with this circuit. We'll be tuning in tomorrow for the 6th round of Season 3 of the NLRL Sunday League from the very same circuit, and I am frankly terrified at the prospect of what could happen there, as we've seen already the bloodbath of round 2. Emerging as its victor though, Vladislav Mizin. What a drive today on debut for the number 1. Very well done, and a very well done to our podium sitters as well. Flitzer Flop, who we saw was driver of the day in round 1, and Manuel Verzi, who makes yet another podium appearance ahead of Matthew Copsey. It seems that history has a knack of repeating itself here. Copsey 4th, Verzi 3rd. Then to the back of the top 5, Steven Sutton held off an absolute tide of drivers there towards the back of that top 10 to hold on to 5th. He's done a grand job with that today. Very, very well done. Asahi Ota reels it back into 6th there after that disastrous start on lap 1. Martin Matinee has definitely got my pick of driver of the day. I'm not sure about you at home, but that Alpine up against such uncertain odds is an absolute trooper drive. What a performance then. Very well done to all of our drivers today, and very, very well done to Vladislav Mizin on debut to be our race winner here in the Nürburgring. That's all from us though here on TRTN. As you can see, the drivers taking leave of the paddock on their way home. That's all from us here. But don't fret, we will be live again today around about 7 o'clock BST for the next round of the NLRL Solo Multi-Class Endurance Championship. I believe we're headed to the Land of the Rising Sun for our second visit this week of Suzuka. So look forward to that. That's all from us here on TRTN. Have a wonderful rest of your evening. Take care. Or have a wonderful rest of your morning for our American viewers. Take care and good night or good day.